Good evening. My name is Wolfgang Dansbeck-Gruber. I'm the director of the Liechtenstein Institute on Self-Determination, and I'm delighted to welcome you to a pretty special event, not all too far from the famous State of the Union night of the United States. And I do so in the name of the Liechtenstein Institute, but also obviously in the name of the Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs. And I do so with amazing pride, joy, and hope. It is my real great pleasure to introduce to you one of our long-term LISD associates, friends, fellows, Mrs. Fawzia Koofi, who is now world famous for many things, but particularly for being the only woman who has so far officially announced its candidacy in the 2014 presidential race of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, whose flag you have here. And I dare say that I have followed Mrs. Kofi's progress, development, challenges since at least a decade now. Mrs. Kofi was born into one of Afghanistan's leading political families in the up northeast province of Badakhshan, and has, as Papa, a member of parliament who then died in the last year of the first Afghan war, and has then decided, and I say this to my young lady colleagues and also older lady colleagues, but especially to the lady colleagues, as a woman, to convince her family that yes, she is worthwhile, and she wants to do it, to study. And no, alas, she might not just not do a medical doctorate, but study politics. And in an amazing perseverance, putting her own ego behind that of her family, especially her two daughters, and trying to combat on a sweet, soft, but determined manner every day of her life Afghan traditions, Afghan male traditions. She began to develop her own special career. She joined UNICEF, and after joining UNICEF, where she worked for the protection of children and the education of children, she began in 2001, promptly after the fall of the Taliban, with this translated initiative to bring children back to school. We met first in 2002, and then in 2003 she attended our first Liechtenstein colloquium on that part in the region. In 2005, Fawzia Kofi was elected to the National Assembly for the Badakhshan district, and she became the vice president. And in 2006, on that very night, she was invited by President Bush to assist and attend the State of the Union address in Washington, D.C. And I will make sure that we all see this State of the Union address of President Obama today. And she then was there as the first deputy speaker of the new parliament of Afghanistan as a woman in the history of Afghanistan. And in 2010, in the parliamentary elections, she became re-elected and is now one of 69 female representatives in the parliament. Anybody of you who has ever been to Afghanistan or who has dealt with an staunch, archaic, male-oriented society can perhaps fathom that not everybody is particularly pleased of Fawzia Koofi's career and of Fawzia Koofi's deeds. And as I dare tell her occasionally, we only have that many lives. There were several attempts on her life already. And I assume that with her increased propensity to get a national, regional, and more international voice for Afghanistan, these challenges might increase. Fawzia Kofi will presumably tell us many things about her vision for Afghanistan, about her perspectives on what the international community should be with Afghanistan and in Afghanistan. But I'm not certain whether she tells us what I found should be for many of us a guidance, is that how she managed to combine personal life, family, the orientation of motherhood and being there for the children with being challenged on an everyday basis by the sheer fact that she's a woman. And she managed to do so. And one of the more touchy books I have seen by any of my famous political friends in recent years is her collection of letters to her children, which are letters which she wrote in part when she said goodbye to her kids, because it wasn't really certain whether they would see each other again. And I have to say, one of your colleagues, who was also here a couple of years ago, said once to me, you know, Wolfgang, we live with death on an hourly fraction. We don't even know whether we have any medical care if something really happens. But he didn't express the combination of challenge and personal drive with this sort of forward-looking, hopeful orientation to the next generation as you build it in any and everything you're doing. And so it is with a particular pleasure and really gratitude that I can present you here at Princeton a person which in the most challenging, if not for some time, antagonistic aspects of professional political life has managed to come out from the deep mountains up in Badakhshan and already now has transformed the future of that Afghanistan for which we have paid such high price in terms of blood and material resources. And where, for me and for us here at Princeton, it has always been the most important, the fate of the individual man, woman, and child in Afghanistan, that they may have a more prosperous and peaceful and again stable developing future. And I think if there's ever been a hope for that, Madam, you are that. So with this, delighted to have you here at Princeton. Please welcome with me, Fawzia Kofi.
Thank you very much, my good friend, Professor. I by no means deserve that introduction that you kindly made. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a honor and a privilege to be among this some wonderful people here and at the very prestigious institute, Woodrow Wilson School, but also the Princeton University. This is my second time being here. Of course, there are some changes since the first time I was here. Up to now, I remember when I was here back in 2009, still Afghanistan was one of the world priority and the foreign policies of many countries. and the withdrawal and the exit strategy was still a baby, which was just born. And as a 3-4 years after that, now I talk to you, I know that many perspectives have changed about Afghanistan. I know that the world leaders, including President Obama, and many governments have different view, and I know that Afghanistan perhaps might not be any more a favorable agenda to talk about it. We also have the same impatience in Afghanistan. We would have liked to see changes happen quicker, but there are changes. Now that I talk to you, and I know that many of you want to hear about withdrawal and post-2014, let me tell you that the main concern for many Afghans in Afghanistan is the uncertainty about what is going to happen in the peace process, what is going to happen on the decade of change, which is starting from 2014. How are we going to transit politically? Because that's the key. If we have a successful political transition and election that as a result of that accountable, strong government takes place, and that government takes responsibility for many of our internal homework, I think things will go to the direction that we all wish to. But in the meantime, there is also the worst case scenario, and I hope that that worst case scenario doesn't happen in Afghanistan. I think what basically most of you hear is about Afghanistan is the media, and I know that the media usually talk about news, which is suicide bombing or killing. There is another face of Afghanistan that for some of you who have not been there, it has been a hidden issue. We don't, the media don't talk about it. And also when we politicians come to the Europe or Western capitals, we also, or DC, or to the decision makers, we also try to talk about our problems to attract attention. We hardly talk about those progresses that have been made in Afghanistan. And I think one of those progress that is not measurable, we cannot measure it. It's not a building that's built. It's not the number of schools that we sent. They are there. But it's the social changes that happen in Afghanistan. It's the transformation that happened in Afghanistan. Afghanistan right now is not the Afghanistan of 2001 or Afghanistan of 1996, when Taliban could rule over people, including women, the way they wanted. When there was this civil war and people, for them to access basic food, they had to pay their life to get something from the shops. Right now, people of Afghanistan have really progressed. Afghan society is in two parts. One is this transformed part of Afghan society, which have progressed, and they would like to live in a situation where there is democracy, there is minimum standard of life, people have a voice to say, there is freedom of speech, there is democratic institution like parliament functional, the government which is more responsible and accountable, the young generation that go to school and go to university. That is the transformed part of Afghan society that we don't see it. It has not been reported to the media. And when sometimes I hear from different friends and commentators, when they say that democracy was imported to Afghanistan and Afghan people are never pro-democracy, it doesn't work there, I don't buy that agenda, because I don't buy that argument, because if democracy is about election, about people's participation, if democracy is about freedom of speech, I think we have some of the most vibrant media right now in Afghanistan. It's we have over 300 something radio stations. We have alone in Kabul we have more than 25 TV channels that we sometimes have difficulties in choosing which one shall we shall we watch to. We have a newspaper that is brought to our doors every morning. Can you imagine? This was not even it didn't happen. It was not possible 2 years back. I hardly could access a newspaper. Right now, each morning there is this envelope of different kinds of newspaper that are brought to my door, and also to many other doors. And that part of Afghan society, which is the transformed part of Afghan society, has little voice. They don't have strong voice in the palace. They don't have strong voice in the parliament. They don't have strong voice, at the international community level, because international community also, when they go to Afghanistan, they would like to meet the big chunks, the big leaders, the one that can create troubles and can, become part of the troublemakers. The other part of Afghan society is this, I would say, conservative part of Afghan society, that they have a say in palace, they have a say in the parliament, they are within Taliban, they're everywhere. They have much more stronger voices. They are much more, they have been leading Afghanistan for the past decades and centuries. They have been the leaders of the country, traditionally leading the country. Their voices are much more stronger. So this is the change that I don't think it's I don't think we could take it back. It's a change. It's unlike 20 years back when the government in Kabul was backed by Soviet Union. The change was basically at Kabul level. When you talked about women, there was a group of elites that were at Kabul. When you talk about, political and intellectuals, it was basically in Kabul. You go to the provinces, that change has been less seen in the districts and the villages. But right now, the change is happening from the villages and district. And when I say change, I mean, even no matter where in Afghanistan, a mother wants to send her girl to school. Even in Kandahar, even in Helmand, places where there is, they are regarded as red area, highly risk and threatened area, they want to send their daughters to school. I was the first girl from my family and from my village to get education. And for that, I really had to pay a high price. Every day, I had to look at different faces of my family who is happy to allow me to go to school. But now, from the same village, we have 10 female teachers. I don't think any of the Americans or Europeans imposed that kind of perspective change to the people. Now people understand that it's important for them to send their girls to school. It's important for them to send their boys to school. It's important for them to ask for school. From some of the most conservative community, people come to me and ask for girls' school. And I tell them why, like 20 years back, they were even hiding their boys to go to school. They wouldn't allow their boys to go to school because they think that if they go to school 20 years back, they will find an official identity within the government, and then they will have to go to become soldiers. And so to avoid that, they will even don't let their boys to go to school. Right now, they ask school for their girls. And I ask them, why do you want school for your girls? They say, if my girl become like you, to be able to deliver services to her people, then I will want my girl to go to school. That is, I think, the perspective change. In 2010 parliamentary election, I'll give you another example. There is one province, if some people from Afghanistan are here, or if some people who have been to Afghanistan, they know that there is a province called Nimroz, which is bordered with Iran. It seemed to be one of the conservative provinces. And I see some of my friends here already that I haven't met during the. So that province is one of the conservative province. In the last parliamentary election, they have 2 seats. We have woman quota for the parliamentary. We have 27% women in the parliament, according to the quota. That province have 2 seats, one for man, one for woman. In the last parliamentary election, woman managed to defeat man. So both seats in that province are being occupied by women. When people say democracy doesn't work in Afghanistan, is this like Americans or Europeans that went voted for that woman? No, it's people of that province who know that, this lady has the capacity. On merit basis, she voted for that woman. As Professor said, in the history of Afghanistan, we never had a woman chairing the plenary. Like yourself, like 249 people who used to fight with each other, used to use guns and weapons against each other, were sitting in that plenary. Sometimes they were using the same color of card, either green or red, not weapon. And I was chairing that plenary. They were fighting for the fact that they don't want to see a woman in public. But now they were sitting in a parliament when I was chairing the plenary. That has hardly been reported to you. I know that you have invested blood and treasure in Afghanistan. And the cost of that blood and treasure should be more gratefulness and appreciation, which we are thankful to you for that. But in the meantime, I know that there was a cause. And that cause was a common cause when you went to Afghanistan. Before 2001, people in Afghanistan were screaming that we are a victim of terrorism. Nobody was listening. The whole world was ignoring and saying, it's a civil war, let Afghans to deal with it. It was only 2001 when the 11th September attack happened. And the whole world came to this understanding that we have to do something about that part of the world. And therefore, you went to Afghanistan. Since then, I know that there were so many mistakes made by international community, by yourself, so many mistakes by us at the Afghan government level. I think wrong role models have represented us. By no means a stupid man who enters the house of civilians in the middle of the night, kill 16, 17 civilian people, could represent the wish and willingness of US people, I guess. It by no means can represent your wish of helping a nation. In the same time, by no means that soldier who is killing, American man or woman could represent the Afghan wish. So wrong marginalized role models are not, the good examples that we use. I know that perhaps it will be very difficult for me to convince American public to continue to stay engaged in Afghanistan while you have lost many jobs, while you are suffering with your own economic problems, while you have so many internal politics like we do. We do have those problems. But in the meantime, I want to make it a case that it's not only an Afghan war that you got involved. It has many dimensions, including regional dimensions. And now it has become a global problem for everybody. Therefore, you went to Afghanistan. 11 years have gone. In the 11 years, you expected more changes. We also expected. I don't think anybody will be impatient more than an Afghan girl who has to walk 2 hours to reach a school. She wants a closer school to be built for her. We want to see changes quicker than, I guess, you, because we are the main victim. We want to see governments that are more accountable and responsible for that. But I guess the problem was that we raised too much expectations initially. We thought Afghanistan could be changed to another, perhaps Switzerland in Asia, which was wrong. It's a country that is so much different, and geographically, it's economically, it's a very complex country. We have been dealing with issues for the past 35 years with war and conflict. So it was unrealistic to raise that expectations on one hand. On the other hand, we also, made mistakes. One of those mistakes was that a lot of money went to Afghanistan without prioritizing things, without making sure that actually which ones are our priority, which one should be done first. As a result, we end up being everything. So many things, corruption and other problems occurred. The other problem of, I guess, international community was investing too much on individuals instead of promoting the systems and the establishment. And I guess one of other mistakes was that we really continue to support a very much centralized system instead of considering the differences of Afghanistan and making a little bit decentralization of political as well as administrative and financial power. And I guess the other mistake was that you all got involved in Iraq war, and Afghanistan was not anymore a priority for the world, and that was the time when with insurgency and those people who wanted to create problems for Afghanistan revised their strategy, and they came back with a stronger strategy. Because I remember in 2003 and 2004, but particularly between 2001 and 2003, one could sit in a car from Kabul and go to the Helmand, which seemed to be the highly threatened, insecure area right now. Man, woman, children, in the middle of the night, there was no problem. Where were Taliban by then? It was our mistakes that gave more power, gave more time for Taliban and insurgency to re-emerge. And I hope that the international community don't repeat that mistakes that we have repeated so many times, and I'm seeing that it's going to happen with the withdrawal in 2014. And I know that perhaps President Obama will have a new message for us this evening about withdrawal, but or a repeated message which is about expediting the withdrawal. I mean, Afghanistan has been a sovereign nation forever, and look at our history, we have always fought for sovereignty. Afghanistan was the reason which the Soviet Union collapsed, and I'm sure you agree with me that it was the resistance and the resilience of people of Afghanistan that resulted in collapse of Soviet Union. But when the whole world turned face from Afghanistan, and you came without even not having a US embassy or presence in Afghanistan, that was the time the civil war began. That was the time that the Taliban came back. And Taliban was established. So I hope that we don't go to the very, very recent history of Afghanistan, which in 1989, the Soviets left, and then the power was handed over to Mujahideen, and as a result of that, the civil war began. I hope that the world will handle with Afghanistan case with more of responsibility and more of looking at Afghanistan in a way that it's not just an Afghan issue. It's more of a regional and global problem, but regional in a way that our neighboring countries are right now trying to reshape themselves as we are coming closer to the 2014. They would like to they would like to influence the situation in Afghanistan. They would like to see their own elements that are that get more power in Afghanistan, and that's a concern. And if the international community turn face and come back at this situation without longer-term political, longer-term financial commitment to Afghanistan, the fear is that in the worst-case scenario, that very recent part of history might repeat again. And the main victim of that will be women and children, because it was women and children who paid a high price. It was either a woman, father or husband or son who got killed in the war, and the responsibility of the family came to the woman who was not educated. She had to take responsibility of the children. She didn't have enough money to send her boy to school. And the next generation of uneducated came out, and partially they became Talib. So certainly we don't want to repeat those mistakes that, the universal values that we stick ourselves to it get undermined. And one of those universal values are the issue of, women's rights in Afghanistan. I think this has been one of the main achievements of international community and the people of Afghanistan. And I think there are universal standards that one has to go. And those achievements that we have had in terms of women political participation, women social participation, economic access for women, that in the villages you go right now, you see women are part of the city, the community development councils, you see women are part of local provincial councils, you see women are in the parliament, but that is not only quantity. I mean, quantity does matter, because you have to have an entry point to ensure that there is a quality representation, but also quality-wise. I mean, the days that I don't appear on TV, because we do appear on TV so much in Kabul, that the days that I don't appear on TV, people know that I'm not in Afghanistan. So that's how they monitor our presence. Like, if I don't appear so much, they know that I have perhaps left to some, foreign mission. That level of closeness and accountability, and also the level of being, accessible to people by the woman is there. And I think that is something we cannot afford to lose it. And therefore, we need solidarity from our sisters initially, but also our brothers to extend their support for Afghan women. I don't buy this argument when people say that, well, Afghans have been dealing with their traditional issues forever. Women of Afghanistan have been suffering from such problems forever. It's not true. It's actually the result of war that has imposed such suffering and trouble for women. When I was a kid, baby, my mother never knew what's war. But my children are grown up with war. And they hate to see people with, sometimes when we go to the streets, I see that tension in their faces when they see people with weapons and guns. I'm sure none of us in this room want to see our children and grandchildren to be afraid of anything in their life. We want them to be brave, and so Afghan woman and Afghan mother wants to see their children go forward. And therefore, I think we need your support on that. But Afghan woman cause is not just the only cause that we need your support. The only alternative for Afghanistan right now is democracy. If not democracy, what else? Are we ready to have another Talibanized regime in Afghanistan? Are we ready to have another Islamic, under the name of Islamic Emirate, but an Islam that is a Muslim woman? I'm not familiar with it. And many Muslim scholars around the world don't buy it. Are we ready to have another Islam, another regime in Afghanistan that a woman cannot go to see a doctor without a male companion? And what happens if a woman doesn't have a male companion? Shall she borrow a male companion? That's what I did. When they put my husband in jail and I wanted to go and see him, the taxi driver told me that he was nice, one of those gentle Afghan men. He told me that, Mom, I cannot take you because Taliban will stop us and ask me question, what is your relationship with her? So we need to make already a relationship to take you. And then the relationship was that he is my brother and I'm his sister. And so we exchanged the name of father, and that's how he took me to see my husband in jail, in prison. As woman who would like to have, and as man who would like to have basic rights for yourself. Do you really want to see in other parts of the world that people are suffering from such kind of problems? I'm sure no. That's why you are here. So the alternative for democracy at this stage, I don't see for Afghanistan. Yes, democracy has its problem in Afghanistan. Yes, there are corruption. Yes, there is lack of rule of law. Yes, there is poverty. There is lack of, accountability to the people when it comes to their problem. Yes, people need more social services. People need more accountability. Certainly, I, as a member of parliament, I don't want to sit in a car which is so bumpy in the streets of Kabul. And certainly, I don't want to go to the village to see that a woman has to walk 4 hours to fetch water for her family. We want to see those indicators improve. And certainly, I don't want to see a mother. This is something I have been seeing in my life. To access a health clinic, to deliver a baby, she has to walk 1 week. And in complicated case of delivery, she has to take a donkey, and a pregnant woman cannot sit in a donkey. Can you imagine how she will face this situation? We all want to see those indicators get improved, but that will not happen if there is no accountable elected government, if there is no democracy. So we need to ensure that this political transition from now to 2014, the election happens before, to the minimum standards, before the military transition happens. And therefore, I think that's our responsibility at DC, at Afghanistan. There are certain things that it's our homework. There are certain things that it's the responsibility of international community to ensure that there is fair and fine elections. The first thing is that ensure that there is enough budget for elections. The second thing is that we need to ensure that there are independent electoral bodies, including the personnel, the staff, the chairperson, those who work at the election commission. They are neutral and they are respectful to democracy. They are not related or affiliated with one individual and work on that favor. We need to ensure from now to 2014 that the electoral reforms in the election law are brought. This is something we are working. It's one of our legislative priority. As I go back and the parliament resume its work, we will work on the electoral law to ensure that there is more polling stations for people. That will avoid women, long walking, and women could get out of their houses and villages and vote. Of course, there were many problems with the previous election, including the 2009 that women votes were used on their behalf, the proxy votes and the fake votes. This is something we would like to avoid. We would like to make sure that women get the required civic education to know that how much it's important for them to get out of their houses and vote. Women mobilization, but the whole society mobilization is important. I know there are questions about security of the election. I know that there are questions about inclusiveness, but with all the problem, we need to have election for a political transition. To ensure that there is a strong, decisive, accountable government in place. So electoral reforms are one aspect of it, but in addition to that, they are needed for establishing coalitions and political groups and promoting the right candidate to bring changes for Afghanistan. Because I think perspective of the society is ready for change. The silent Afghan majority want to live in minimum standards of democracy, if not to the maximum. Post-2014 is a big question for Afghan people, and I guess it is for our international community. Recently, there is this transition program that Afghan forces take responsibility from international forces. We have PRTs, they are the provincial reconciliation team in each province, that they gave responsibility to Afghan forces, our police and army. The motivations and the morale of our police and army is incredible. I'm sometimes really proud of those forces that with empty hands, they fight terrorism. Recently, last year, there was an attack on, well, actually, it was last year. In May, there was an attack on parliament by Taliban. It's interesting to see that this Afghan brave soldier who is already injured, and you see that blood is coming from his part of body, he is fighting from down a block. It's a very tall block, and the Taliban are on top of the block. They are fighting down, and they are like in a main important strategic location. But this Afghan soldier is fighting him from the street with a very old Kalashnikov. He knew that he might get killed, but he wanted to at least protect his democratic institution, which is the parliament. Last year, there was another attack on NATO and I think US embassy in Afghanistan. And there was a suicide bomber who came close to a bus station to explode himself and kill a lot of civilians. The Afghan soldier, when he knew, and he is the father of 4 children, when he knew that this is a suicide bomber, he went and held the suicide bomber and threw himself with that suicide bomber to a corner, which exploded, and both of them were killed. That way, he avoided civilian casualty. He avoided ordinary people to be killed. That is the morale and the motive of our forces. But unfortunately, it's only in 2008 when the international community started supporting our forces. They started supporting our forces in terms of equipment and capacity too late. And now the rocket the Taliban attack could target 20 kilometers. And the rocket that our forces use could target 3 kilometers. So we need to ensure from now up to 2014, we give enough equipment and supply to Afghan forces that they are able to stand against this regional phenomenon and to protect Afghanistan from a situation where it could be a potential, again, safe haven for terrorism if we don't take it serious. On the transition, the other element that we hardly talk about is, and that is, again, the responsibility of all of us, is the financial implication of the transition. Already when there is less appetite on the ground to invest, people are losing jobs. Translators and those who have been working with companies, they are losing jobs. And my fear is that the economy implication of transition will be more on women. Because ISAF and NATO do their procurement and whatever supply procurement through the government of Afghanistan. And the government of Afghanistan, being a male-dominated government, they favor man contractors. So women contractors have started to losing their contracts as well. So I think if women are not economically empowered, what happens is a woman is not able to feed and send her child to school, and then we will have another generation of uneducated people, another generation of uneducated brother who will not send her sister to school. Therefore, we have to look at longer-term strategies that how we could, walk alongside this transformation in Afghanistan and reduce our intention and our appetite that we should get out of Afghanistan quickly. I know that there are several anti-war movements and peace movements in your countries that they believe there is human rights violation and it happened during war. That's true. As a civil society activist, as a mother, I don't want to hear anymore the voice of shooting. I want my daughters to watch cartoons and enjoy that. But one has to look at the other picture of the story. What happens if tomorrow the same daughters that I want them to watch cartoons and movies are exposed to stay home? They're pressurized to stay home and don't go to school because the government, in this case Taliban government, don't want girls to go to school. I'm sure that if you balance between two, I will go for that I allow my new generation of Afghanistan to have the opportunity to get education. And when we have an educated nation in Afghanistan, they could be a reliable partner and reliable supporters and working with you alongside for our values of democracy. We want to have an Afghanistan where it's not regarded as a country that only gets donations, but a country that is a reliable partner to the world. These are the things that we are working. Afghanistan is not chronically a poor country. I'm sure you agree. It's a rich country. We have billions of dollars underground for natural resources. We need to make sure that those underground natural resources are used for the interests of Afghanistan, not for individual pockets. We need to ensure that those mines are used to create jobs for Afghan people. So a young Afghan graduate boy doesn't have to go become Talib just to find some source of money, some source of income. Afghanistan is located at a very important geographical location that connects Central Asia to South Asia. Right now, it's our weakness because it has become a battlefield between different countries in the region. We would like to change that as a strength by increasing business between Central Asia, South Asia, and Afghanistan, a safe place to transit this business. Those are the wishes that we want to have for Afghanistan. We will not be able to make our wishes come true if there is no security, if there is no peace. I know that there is the so-called peace process that for me, I have always been the critics of this process. It looks like a project because process is like democracy. Like democracy is a process. You include people, you mobilize people to support certain, and you make a social contract between governments and the voters for certain accountability. That's how the peace process is. We need to ensure that there is certain accountability from two sides. I know that the United States government is pursuing the Qatar office. I hope they will make sure that there are women included in that. I heard President Obama speaking with our president at the press conference, that he assured Afghan women that their rights will be safeguarded. But that assurance we want to come in practice. We cannot stand behind stages and say it. It has to come to practice. That means women issues and their participation. Not only quantity participation, that a must, but their quality participation in terms of the issues of concern should be on the table, on the negotiation table, and there should be some red lines that we cannot cross them. Afghan constitution is one of those red lines. Women political, social participation, basic freedom for women is the other red line that we cannot cross. We want peace with justice. We cannot pay for one for the other. I know that everybody wants to settle this political settlement before 2014. Everybody is in a hurry. But, history tells us that if we do things that are not matching the ground realities in Afghanistan, we will fail. On the other point on the peace and reconciliation is that it has to be one unified voice from international community. Different countries cannot pursue different programs. We cannot, I think it will confuse Afghan nation to hear a 6 months peace plan from one country, another plan from another country. It has to be led by Afghans and its institutions, with including women including civil society, including the activists in Afghanistan, including the political opposition reformists in this process, and the government of Afghanistan. We need to sit and honestly present our issues and see how much Taliban have changed. I would be glad to see how much Taliban have changed in their perspective. I don't want to hear this change from my minister. I want to hear it from the Taliban. I want to receive an assurance from Taliban that they will not stop my daughters as they did stop me from going to school. And this is something we also need your support on that. I mean, as global partners and somebody, as I assume many of you that are here, you have an interest and you're people with very good heart about things of concern for human being. We need your solidarity and support in lobbying at the politicians level that women of Afghanistan voices, their participation, their concerns, and nation of Afghanistan voices should be on the negotiation table. We cannot continue to have dialogue behind the curtains. There should be transparency on this process. And that will give an assurance to us in Afghanistan that we are going on the right direction. And I think the element factor of peace with a honest engagement of our neighboring countries is a must. Because if you don't have honest and continued support from our neighboring countries, mainly Pakistan and Iran, it's not going to work. They will have to get involved because we know they play an important role in this. And last but not least, that progressive part of Afghan society, which I talked about, and I said that those progressive part of the Afghan society has been less represented at national and international level. Therefore, I think it's our turn to stand at the national level and international level to represent that progressive part of society. And therefore, I decided to run. I know the challenges. Some people ask me question, is Afghanistan ready? I mean, it's a mindset, it's a mentality we all create for ourselves. I know, it's so difficult to get to that position in Afghanistan, but much more difficult must be to be in that position, to run a country where has been through 35 years of war and conflict. But as somebody who lived all my life in Afghanistan, I know A to Z of politics in Afghanistan. I know A to Z of my people demand. I know how shall we make priorities. I know how shall we make Afghanistan a reliable partner for its citizen, a reliable country for its citizen, and partner to the world. And those are my passion. My strength is my people. They have demonstrated in the past 2 elections that they have supported me. And I believe that they will continue to support me. What I need is somehow solidarity from all of you. Thank you very much.
Speech certainly carried many messages. Milady, you have agreed to take some questions? Please, the floor is yours. For all ages, especially the younger ones. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Well, it's several things that I find that. Thank you for coming. There's several things that I find that in looking at the Afghanistan, I don't want to say the Afghanistan problem, but some of the issues that are in Afghanistan that, okay, I'll just say that. Is there a class issue in Afghanistan? Term limits, drugs, the drug problem that's going on because people are dealing with war and that's how they've come to deal with those particular issues. And loyalty and patriotism. How do you encourage that in a region that's so tribal?
Thank you. I will start with your last question of loyalty and the love for the country. I think we all love our country, but it depends on what is the approach that we take to contribute in the reconstruction and rebuilding of Afghanistan. I believe that the elements of war in Afghanistan are not just an Afghan element. I think there are many intelligence involved, and they are basically working for the intelligence of other countries. Therefore, they have very little support in Afghan society. Even if people are not happy with the current government, like some of us are not, because of the low performance, but we certainly don't want to see a Taliban government, because we know who they are pursuing, whose agenda they are following in Afghanistan. The drug problem, it is, because we have been living in war, it's a problem. One of the challenges we have among security, corruption, and the third one is the drug problem. But I'm sure you agree with me that Afghanistan is not a demand country, it's a supply country. Drug is being trafficked, unfortunately, to other parts of the world. So therefore, we need, once again, a honest regional battle for this issue, that we had little support on that. But people don't talk about other nice things we have. They don't talk about nice fruit we have. They don't talk about the karakul we have. They don't talk about Afghan beautiful rag. They don't talk about, the nice precious stones like lapis lazuli and, ruby, other nice things that we have. Those are nice things for business. Why are we going to make drug business in Afghanistan? I think we have to look at other options in Afghanistan too.
Thank you for coming, really appreciate it. So it sounds, Hamid Karzai was here about a few weeks ago at the White House with President Obama, and it sounds like in a post-2014 Afghanistan, the combination of US troops and NATO troops will be around 10,000, give or take a few thousand, which is certainly a lot less than it currently is right now. But my question is, if you are elected president of Afghanistan next year, and President Obama invites you to the White House for a one-on-one meeting, the first meeting between both of you, what would you say to President Obama with regard to the post-2014 situation in Afghanistan? Would you like the 10,000 troop number? Would you like more, less? How would you like to see them, both the US troops and NATO troops, assist the people of Afghanistan once we're in less of a combat situation and the Afghan troops take over most of the operations?
Well, you know that we are in a negotiation stage with the United States government about security partnership, which basically framework the US engagement in Afghanistan post-2014, particularly about the number and the modality of the troops on the ground. For me, honestly, the number doesn't make a big difference. For me, the commitment is important. I certainly, when I say that the early withdrawal could resolve problems in Afghanistan, I don't mean I want to see a US soldier in each street of Kabul with military. What I mean is that the morale, that the message that it gives to our neighboring countries, the message it gave to the Taliban, that message is not for the interest of both Afghanistan and international community. So I certainly think that my message when I see, as a president of Afghanistan, your president, would be that please go to the places where the source of terrorism is coming, where terrorism get their training, their source of funding. Please get engaged in those places.
Thank you.
Miss, yes, please. Yeah.
Ms. Koofi, thank you for coming. It was an honor to hear you speak. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about the role of women in Afghan society. Just going forward, how do you think the international community and the Afghan government can sort of help advance the role of women and their status in society? Do you see it through economic participation, political participation, civic?
It's a combination of all, actually. Luckily, quantity-wise, we have quite a number of women in the parliament. Afghanistan has 27% of women in the parliament, and in the United States, you know what is the percentage? It's 19%. I think you should improve it. That political participation that makes that allow women to get to the power position and that way influence the society. Like, for instance, we are in the parliament right now lobbying for the law on violence against women, which is one of the most difficult laws to be approved. Issues that were regarded as part of tradition, like beating of a woman, physical abuse, like, to somehow sexual abuse, depriving a woman from her property right, for instance, early marriages, forced marriages. These issues that were regarded as part of Afghan woman life. We put it in this law as a violence, as a crime. So we have difficulty approving this law. There are very few MPs that are opposing it. Hopefully we will get it approved. We are working with the government, with the executive, with the palace basically, to ensure that there is one woman in the Supreme Court, because we think that that's an entry point, and it will give an assurance that next time there will be 2 women. At the provincial council and province level, we are promoting to have more women as district manager. We have the first woman district manager who was appointed 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. And so it continues like that. Unfortunately, yes, we have a reduction in some areas. For instance, according to the Afghanistan National Strategy, Development Strategy, we needed to have, by 2013, 30% of women in civil service. It has reduced. We have 18 to 20%. It goes basically to corruption, to the favorism, all of other elements that we are working on it. But I think women economy and political participation, they are two interlinked. If I was not economically independent, I would have not been where I am now, because I had a job, a salary, and this is something we are trying to promote for post-2014 for women, to have more economic access to capitals, basically. Engaging in agriculture and income generation for women, because that's very important. If a woman is not economically empowered, she will not have a say at home, let alone the society. So we are lobbying with the government and international community to have 30% of all the money that comes to Afghanistan, that was committed, $16 billion was committed for Afghanistan in Tokyo conference, which was held in last June. We have lobbied with the government of Afghanistan to allocate 30% of that for women economic empowerment and small businesses. And we asked the government to, that is also for international community, but the government to have 5 female ministers. So we are really struggling, but in the meantime, woman issue, it's not an issue to work on. It's like every day you have to basically put your forehead in the stone when you are working on woman issues, and we do that. The good thing is that there is more awareness about their rights among women. That awareness sometimes leads to more clashes in the family and domestic violence, but I think this is part of this transition that we might move.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, please. Those of you who would like to speak, if you please come to the microphone.
Hi, my name is Alex El-Fakir. I'm an undergraduate. Thank you again for coming out this evening. When creating policy, it's always an important part to kind of look at things when they go wrong necessarily and plan for contingencies. So not just necessarily talk about the idealistic, what should the US do, what should the world do to make things go right. I would like to present to you 3 cases that could happen in the next year where I think things could be difficult, not necessarily worst case scenarios, but things that would be difficult. And I would like to maybe hear how you think they might turn out, or what you expect or think the international community, particularly the US, should do in those cases. The first, a really close political election. Obviously something that would be marred by maybe discrepancies in votes, something that would be very difficult to say who won, but still a participation in democracy. So definitely a victory on that front, but something that would be very difficult to decide. The second, I would say, is Karzai decides to go for a 3rd term, or is some way involved in pushing a candidate such as his brother to the forefront, which, again, may be a success as far as election goes, but maybe, let's say, he pushes the election date past the US withdrawal, obviously something you wouldn't necessarily want, not true democracy. And the last one, a little more morbid, the US withdraws, and the Taliban, strategically, let's say, waiting for that withdrawal, does go on a strategic offensive, both as far as propaganda and also in military terms, and say it is supported, as you said, by a strategic important actor, Pakistan. And as the US military fears, say the Afghanistan army does not live up to its expectations that we so all hope for. What then? Thank you.
No, these are very important questions, and I see you have lots of information and information about Afghanistan, the ground situation. About the election, I think I touched base briefly, but I think we may need water and milk 3 times a day, or 4 times or whatever. That much people in Afghanistan talk about elections every day at their dinner, lunch, breakfast. Because if we fail in 2014 election, that is a fail that we cannot afford to pay for it. Yeah, there were 4 elections before, one in 2004, 5, 9, and 10. But the coming election is key for us to have a successful election for primarily reason that the US will withdraw, international community, and we have to stand on our feet, politically as well. Therefore, it's important for us. There are a few things that we need to make sure that it happens. First of all, a political pressure that we need to have elections on due time. Because for me, postponing of election once means you continuously keep postponing election, and you can't do that. Constitution-wise, we need to stick to the election date. It's announced right now, next year, April. We have to stick to that with all the problems of geographic, that in many areas, it will be very difficult for people to access polling stations, especially the area that I come from. But what we try to do is to increase, in the electoral law, to increase number of polling stations so that everybody could access. The second thing is once we are assured that elections will happen, and that I think I was really happy to see the remarks by John Kerry, the Secretary of State, in his before appointment. He made it clear that we cannot afford to not have elections in Afghanistan, so different actors should know that we should have elections. So some political pressure from different actors' side, especially those countries that they fund elections in Afghanistan. The second thing, there are some issues that are our homework. We need to reform electoral law, election structure law. We need to make sure that mechanisms are put in place that gives us some hope and some assurance for transparency in the election. These words of transparency and fairness are like dreams that we see them in the election. I hope it will come true, but we need to make sure that to some extent. Right now, in March, the chairperson of Election Commission term is going to finish. So President has all the right, because we haven't approved the law yet, according to the previous law, to appoint a new chairperson. The independency and neutrality and professionalism of that new person is so important for us, because if a chairperson of Election Commission is somebody who is related to certain political people, he has all the power to fabricate the election result first, to postpone the election announced due to security or unforeseen situation, elections are postponed. He has all the power. And our fear is that if it's appointed by people who are close to palace or in the palace, then he might favor them. Therefore, I think during my meetings with certain people here at DC and here, I know it's on the record. I hope that that we make all our efforts that the electoral bodies and institutions in Afghanistan are independent, so that people trust the future elections. We don't certainly want to damage the trust of people at this stage, which is very early. Democracy is still a child in Afghanistan. The third thing is political coalitions for a change. I know constitutional-wise, President Karzai has no right to run for third time. But I know there are all rumors and gossips about certain candidates. If the political oppositions and coalition don't come together and don't agree on, one candidate at least, then there are all chances that whoever is favored by palace get elected, because they have all means in their hands. They have security in their hands. They have everything in their hands. The third thing is that we need to make sure that everybody at least participate in election. So we need a security plan, really. And that security plan cannot be alone by our forces. We need to, because sometimes those forces, especially when we have militia, local militia get involved in security of election under the name of Arbakis or, I don't know, local police. If they get involved in security of election, that means they could also influence the voters by pressure. So therefore, I think involvement of NATO ISAF forces for security of election is important. I think on the Karzai issue, I briefly mentioned on the worst case scenario. We hope it doesn't happen, but the worst case scenario is if there is no clear political transition, and as a result, an accountable government doesn't take place, and U.S. in domestic politics withdraw from Afghanistan, and we don't come to a clear conclusion on the peace and on the strategic partnership with the United States, military partnership, Taliban might keep quiet till then and then come back. I'm sure they will not be able to come back to the level that they were ruling Afghanistan, because there is a public resistance against them. In 1996, when they came back, people didn't know who they are. There was a lot of contradictory around them. But now we know them. So, but there will be all the possibilities for another conflict, internal conflict in Afghanistan. And when there is an internal conflict, which we hope we don't get to that point, we're all hopeful for a best case scenario. When we go to that level, then Afghanistan once again can be a safe haven for Al-Qaeda and their supporters to promote themselves, to plan agenda, and the world will not be safe once again.
Yes, please, ma'am.
Thank you for that wealth of information tonight.
You should go to the microphone.
I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about if there are feminist movements in Afghanistan that try to strive for gaining more rights for women through the confines of Islamic tradition, and also, especially when it comes to property, the rights for property and education. Thank you.
Before you go, I would like to tell you that we are going to have a public reception afterwards. So those of you who can't ask all the questions and have the chance to talk personally. Did you take note of the question?
Yes, I could.
Could you connect another one also, please?
Thank you so much for these very powerful words. My name is Sadaf Jaffer, and I'm a doctoral student at Harvard University. And my question for you is, for those of us in this room that could possibly write to our elected representatives in the United States, if there was one issue that you would like us to really write about, or to write about how the American people could support the people of Afghanistan, what would that issue be? Thank you.
That's very hard, one issue. We have so many issues.
Hold a sec. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. On the feminism, I think our movement in Afghanistan is within an Islamic rights of women. What we really want is Islamic rights of women, because that is something that has not been given to us. Under the name of, sometimes misinterpretation of Islam, it's women who actually pay the high price. So therefore, our demand is Islamic access of right to women to property, the right to marriage, all those basics that were there when Islam was first established 1,400 years back. Because we don't have women who interpret Islam. It's all being interpreted by man. Therefore, we accept whatever comes. And I think, therefore, we need to really ask for an Islamic rights of women in Afghanistan. And our move, we cannot be in the middle of two extremes. We have experienced the very, very left extreme during communist-backed regime, and we have experienced the very, very right extreme during Taliban regime. We now have to shape ourselves in the middle and see what strategy works for Afghanistan so that we don't face backlashes. And that is, that's why we have arranged our movement. It has not yet become a movement, but our moves in a way that we ask within what we believe is our right in Islam. Even with that, we face challenges in our parliament. Sometimes our male colleagues say that, you women try to bring Western concepts of woman right to us, which is not true. We do stick to some universal values, which are common in United States, common in UN and EU, but we also try to make it according to our own demand, what women of Afghanistan want. Certainly, women of Afghanistan, that their priority is not to look, like women in the United States. Our priority is, as a human being, to be respected. That is our fight. On the one issue, it's like it's a challenge now. One issue, I think, as a woman, that one issue is that will cover peace and women rights and human rights in Afghanistan would be that the United States Congress and Senate, that are one of the leading nations now in peace process, they should ensure that women's rights and children's rights and democracy in Afghanistan is not a matter of compromise.
That's very powerful. Yes, sir, please.
Well, thank you very much for speaking, and I can safely say that after listening to your passion and compassion, the way you have put together your presentation tonight, if most people in Afghanistan are speaking your language, then the future is good and safe, because it's very heartening to hear all the good words you've used. I do want to have your kind of opinion and reflection on 2-3 things. The first is equity and justice.
Versus what?
Equity and justice.
Okay.
All this talk of guns and ammunition and democracy means nothing if the people don't have justice. Judicial system, judiciary throughout the country is extremely important so that they're able to fairly impart justice to the people. And if that's not happening, or if I haven't heard anything from anyone, neither in the media nor the consultants that come up on the TV, and tonight, I know you mentioned justice once or twice, but the more emphasis, in my opinion, is on judiciary, the safer the future. The second thing, again, I haven't heard from anywhere and would like to hear what's going on with food production, small industries, cottage industries. Where's the actual production of the country headed? What about power generation? What's happening in that direction? Because if you won't have this infrastructure, no matter how much we'll use the code words of Taliban or Al-Qaeda or whatever, it's not happening. We've got to have a country that needs to go forward. The third thing that I probably would have not brought it up, but since you're speaking with such clarity and passion, I want to bring it up. And I want to bring it up in the context of Pakistan. Pakistan gets whipping everywhere. It's very easy to get up and start whipping up Pakistan. It's politically favorable to whip Pakistan anytime we feel like. But Pakistan was one place where both sides, the current leadership, which is in power in Kabul, and the current leadership, or whatever the leadership is, that may not be in power in Kabul, both sides took refuge in Pakistan. Millions and millions of people. Pakistan was a host to a whole bunch of people. Took care of a lot of Afghans without asking for anything. And the reward that they got was, that the Pakistanis feel, was the country that was actually supporting the Soviet puppets, India, got a power play into Afghanistan after the 9/11. So do you think, in reflection, and do you think going forward, can this issue be addressed in some way, that let's bygones be bygones, let's have good relationship with Pakistan, and maybe marginalize India to the extent that they need to be. I mean, India is involved, but needs to be marginalized in some way so that the relationship with Pakistan is not put on a wrong foot. So those are the 2-3 things I'd just like to get your passion. And good luck. You're doing a phenomenal job, and I wish you guys all the best.
Thank you. I guess I will start with the last point, which was about Pakistan. I know that many of our leaders have unfortunately spent most of their time in Pakistan and Iran, and that's our problem. because these are like leaders that, anyways. On the mutual respect and understanding, I think both Afghan nation and Pakistan nation, they have many things in common, including our religion, including many traditional values. So we don't have problem with the nation of Pakistan. And I guess both us and the Pakistani nation sometimes have been victim of wrong policies of our governments, and we have to admit that. We are trying to look possibilities of any kind to ensure that our neighboring countries, including Pakistan and Iran, get honestly involved in this reconstruction and peace process in Afghanistan, because we know that security in Afghanistan is security in Pakistan, and we know that you also paid a high price for this. Your leaders were assassinated, so I'm sure that you know the value of, people in Pakistan know the value of security more than anybody else. So I hope that we will all come to this understanding that that we need to become, supporters on mutual interest for each other's. On the case of India relationship, that is the issue I mentioned before. Like, we are victim of battle powers, basically. I think some of the issues are like internal issues of Afghanistan. I don't appreciate it when I keep receiving comments by my Pakistani friends or sometimes other countries who say, you have 7 Indian consulates in your country, why is that? It's absolutely, it cannot be a source of conflict. It cannot be the reason why we have conflicts in Afghanistan. Pakistan has also its own problem. Look what's happening in Quetta, in Balochistan. Look, how the minorities are being treated. And we never gave ourselves this right to interfere, to influence in those situations, because we respect, the Pakistan absolute sovereignty and absolute political sovereignty above all. So I think we will, I hope we will, in a way, get them involved. Right now, I know that they are involved in the UK 6 months peace plan. President of your country and president of our, I don't know where you're from, but president of Pakistan and president of Afghanistan recently met in London, and I hope that that will be effective, and I hope that we will continue these talks. Because, if you ask a woman in North Waziristan, or in Peshawar, or in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, or in Quetta, they are suffering the same problems that women of Afghanistan are suffering. So we have to look at it from a human, basically, perspective and see that the war and conflict is basically damaging all the infrastructures in the 2 sides of the border. On the fruit processing, I absolutely agree with you that we really need to invest on the economic growth of Afghanistan. I would really regret that after 2 years still we have to buy those apples that are, with that sweet, tasty apple we have in Afghanistan, we buy that apple that is coming from China or other countries, all the way from Tajikistan to Uzbekistan and then come to Afghanistan, while there is no packing or storage process in Afghanistan where we could pack our and properly market our products. So I absolutely agree with you on this need. Justice is the main element of security in Afghanistan. The international community mistake was that we forgot justice and we forgot too much on security. Right now we have problem with both of it. So I think it will, that's why I said we need to have peace with justice. Our judiciary system, it has to be one kind of unified, formal, official justice system of Afghanistan. I know there are some countries who are there are some countries who want to support the informal justice system of Afghanistan, which is more traditional, and that is like local councils and local shuras who make decisions on judiciary issues. The problem with that is, there is no accountability. The local shura can make a decision about a woman to be executed or whatever, and then you cannot make anybody accountable. So therefore, we need to have one unified justice system with all the problem that it has. It's slow, it's corrupt, there are problems, but we need to have one judiciary.
Okay, last. Oh, well, an Afghan voice, but at the end then. Please, why don't you collect them?
Hi, thank you for coming, and thank you very much for speaking. I wanted to get back to something you mentioned at the beginning of your talk about the difficulty that Americans and generally people outside Afghanistan have in terms of getting accurate and reliable information about what's really going on there. And I myself have been to Afghanistan. I worked there for several months, and many other people that I know, both Afghans and Americans, speak of what I will diplomatically refer to as an imperfect grasp of the social, economic, cultural, political reality on the ground. And as a result, even the information we do get is pretty difficult to interpret sometimes. My question is, if you could sit down every single man, woman, and child in the USA in a giant room with a bullhorn, with a poster that says, "This is what you need to know," what one or two or three basic, most important things would you tell them?
Can you put this down?
Okay.
What do you need to know? Yes, miss, please.
Thank you. Hi, I'm a high school student from the area, and it's been such an honor to hear you speak. But my main question was, I didn't hear a lot about what you think that the UN's role is in order to kind of aid Afghanistan to kind of come to a place of justice after war, and they do a huge part of sourcing aid. You talked about the Tokyo conference briefly, and do you think they've worked hand in hand with the government, and what do you see as their continuing role in order to receive justice for Afghanistan?
Okay, take the two. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Tom. Tom has been a great friend for the past 7 years, and I will quote one of his comments that he posted on Facebook. For me, he said that I went through Ms. Koofi's book. I know it might be very difficult for her to get elected as President of Afghanistan, but I have a message for the US people. Can we amend our laws and make Ms. Koofi, elect her as our president? That was really powerful. It was really nice. Thank you so much. On the 2-3 issues that people here should know, I think, as always, there are so many things that we would like to share once we get to these capitals, because we have so many problems. We want to talk about different issues that we want to share with them. But one of the things that I think as I stated in my earlier speech, that we hardly talk about this, is this grassroots changes that are happening, and we need to keep them. The changes that each Afghan woman see in her life by watching to TV, by even having a mobile phone. More than 90% of Afghan people have now access to mobile phone. Sometimes I have, friends who comment on my Facebook or Twitter from the very rural villages of Afghanistan. I'm like, I had to travel 3-4 days to reach to those areas. Now they could comment on. It's not a sign of progress, perhaps, but it's something. It's something that's happening. The second thing would be, it's political a bit, but anyways, I will say it. Sometimes we take risks to share issues. That the US should make a choice between those countries who are victims of terrorism and those countries that are supporting. We cannot continue looking at both countries from one glass. That is, I think the important thing that all of us should. Oh, sorry.
And now I would like to give the floor to two of the great voices for Afghanistan and about Afghanistan. Professor Michael Berry, go ahead.
Okay.
Brief question and then the rest.
Very brief. Muhtarama, بسیار خوش آمدی. A tiny question. You made an extraordinary remark when describing a battle between an Afghan soldier and a Talib. And you mentioned that the Afghan soldier had very poor equipment, a gun that couldn't shoot very far, and you mentioned that the Talib had a gun that could shoot as far as 20 kilometers. Why doesn't the Afghan soldier get that kind of a gun, and where did the Talib get that gun? That's my question.
And Mr. Ekachivek from the UN.
You must be exhausted, but just to bring it back to the peace process, and you said briefly it was not a process, it's a project at the moment, but What are your ideas coming out of the parliament, women in parliament, to increase the participation of women in the current projects or processes of peace? Would you rather go for an increase of female members of the High Peace Council? Would you see another process? And where in the parliament do you see the contact point? Is this the Security Commission, which has, I think, only one female member? Or is this the International Affairs Commission of the parliament? I would be grateful for these ideas. Yeah.
And these are your final words.
Okay. I'm sorry I missed the question from that young friend of mine. But I will check, maybe during our thing. Yeah, Professor, it's a very genuine question you raised. I don't know why you know that it was only 2008 when the international community started to provide equipment for Afghan forces. We had a very strong army, but that army was dissolved in one first. There was 74, they agreed on 74,000 army forces, which eventually they increased it. We have now a quite well-trained army. I'm pretty much satisfied with our army than our other forces, security of police or Department of Security. They're well-trained, they're capable of handling operations, but they don't have equipment. I mean, it's something that I think US primarily, but other countries should really invest quite on a base of priority, because if our rockets could target 3 kilometers, then we have to be worried about it. And the helicopters, sometimes I take those helicopters because it's so difficult to get to Badakhshan, where I come from during winter. It's like broken cartons. You sit in the middle of broken cartons. These are from old Russian time that we are using. So I think equipping Afghan forces, this should be a priority. Where the Talib get it, it's if... I was listening, I was watching, because I'm supposed to attend the Daily Show tomorrow evening. It's a program, I think it's a political comedy program. So for me to get an idea of how it is, I was listening to Parvez Musharraf and Jon Stewart, the last program, where they say, he asked him that, where is, last time you lied about Osama bin Laden, and I also lied about your book. That's what he said. He said, you lied where Osama bin Laden is when I interviewed you in 2006, and I also lied because I didn't read your book. And you didn't tell me where Osama was, and later on we found out that where he was. So if I really know where they get all those 20 kilometers target rocket, then I don't think we will have problems, because we could address the source of that problem. But that is the truth. That's a reality, that they are well equipped. There was a war that was on CNN. It was about one American soldier, I guess. I watched it the other day. And that is a demonstration of how, like, weapon and guns the Taliban have. They were entering US space, I think, somewhere in 2009 in Kunar province. There are many mechanisms that we could increase women role. It's not about number. The numbers are important. There are 9 women in Peace Council. We need to make sure that there are more. I have my own point about the current Peace Council, but women at the provincial level that needs to get involved. But women issues, what is going to happen? Clear picture when Taliban come back. If they don't come back through democracy, but through a deal, to the woman political participation. Like, are we going to have those women still in the parliament? Are we going to have like 5 million girls that go to school right now, continue to go to these are the issues that we need to have answer for it. And the relevant commission, although that this process is being so much taken out of parliament kind of priorities, parliament is not in the picture of what's happening really on the peace process, but the Security and Foreign Relations Committee, both will be the line committee to work.
Well, now you know why the international community was for the last 13, 14 years in Afghanistan. If we would have more products like that. invited to a reception, and thank you very much.